Hey YouTubers, welcome back to another episode of the Plantex series. Today we'll be talking about water column fertilization. In the past we've discussed what you need in your substrate to properly feed the roots of your plants. Well, let's discuss what you can add to the water column to finish the job. We'll start off with what you can find in your local pet stores and we'll go from there. So let's get started. One of the most common lines out there is the CChem Flourish line. It comes in a multi and separate chemical setup. They also carry a pro line, which is called the Aqua Vitro line. A little more expensive, a little pricier. Haven't seen that it really is that much better. Brightwell Aquatics has their Florin line, which is great for the price. ADA Amano, very, very expensive, top of the line stuff. Haven't had a chance to play with it yet though. Dry ferts, being my choice, is the most cost effective, and I get mine from Greenleaf Aquariums. Okay, that being said, I think we should take some time and take a look at a past video that I shot about how to apply and put together these dry ferts.
Okay, YouTubers, thought I'd do a quick video on mixing up the Greenleaf Aquarium fertilizers for the planted tanks. I signed off for the package deal. I did get a few extra things, like the iron, which I don't need this time around, but I do need these. Now, the other thing that you require while doing this, there are some websites out there where they give you measurements in teaspoons and fractions of teaspoons and eighths of teaspoons and everything like that. I'm a little anal, so I prefer to do it by weight. And being that these little scales, you can get them on eBay for with shipping and stuff, probably less than $20. It doesn't cost that much. I prefer to do it a little more accurate that way. Anyways, my little scale, turn it on, and what I'm going to be doing is this little container is what I'm going to be adding the different ferts to. So being that this container actually has some weight to it, you set that on the scale, and it's got 8.39 grams is what it weighs. So I don't want that to be included in what I'm adding as far as the weight of the materials. So when I come over here, there's a little Z/T, which means zero out, and if I touch it, it automatically takes the scale to zero, so it ignores the weight of that little container. So, looking at my bottle here, on my macros, I start off with K2SO4, 29 grams. I don't know if you can read that or not. So, K2SO4, we need 29 grams. So, yeah, I know this may be a little boring. Try to speed it up here a little bit. This is one of those that it wants a lot of. Potassium. Plants do love potassium. One of the ways to know if your plants are deficient in potassium is they'll get little holes in the leaves. Little pinholes. 29 grams, correct? Alright, that's just a little bit more there. Let's take a little out. Now you don't really have to be this accurate. I mean, I'm just being a little bit more than I always wanted to be a chemist when I was a kid, so for me this is kind of neat. Got to play with my chemicals. The old mad scientist thing. Okay, so there's my 29 grams. Come up here, I'm going to add it to my bottle. Okay, replace my container. Scale is still zeroed. Next we have KNO3, which is your nitrate, potassium nitrate. Stuff they make bombs out of. And we have 33 grams of this. So that's a nitrate. Break that up. No chunks. Okay, we're getting there. Let's say 33 grams. Just about there. One more. Three. Yeah. Take a dab out. Good done. Okay, 33 grams of KNO3 potassium nitrate. That's the nitrogen your plants need. Okay, now we have KH2PO4, which is your phosphate. And we only get 3 grams of that. So let's spill the nitrate in here first. Now for those of you who aren't really familiar with the dry fertilizers, the reason a lot of us do the dry fertilizers is you can go out and buy the Flourish Excel and the store-bought chemicals from your local LFS or fish store, whatever, box store, Petco, PetSmart or whatever like that, and they're all fine and good, but they're kind of basically what the manufacturer has decided your plants need. Now, being that water in this country is different in every area, I mean, it can be very, very hard and alkaline, or it can be very, very soft and acidic, depending on where you are in the country. Closer to the shoreline you get, the harder and the more alkaline it becomes. Closer inland you get, and away from the mountains and stuff, it usually gets a little softer and more acidic, but it varies throughout the country. And I prefer to be able to cater my own ingredients. If I see that the water we have in our area is a little bit potassium deficient, I can add a little more potassium to my recipe, or if it needs more phosphate, I can up the phosphate, or if it's got too much phosphate, I can lower the amount of phosphate in my recipe. And the other major reason for going with the dry ferts is it's a lot cheaper. It does require that you sit down and do what we're going through right now, but in the long run, these bags of fertilizer will last me probably a couple of years, well, at least 1.5 to 2 years. And Whereas they'll make multiple bottles. Whereas the store-bought stuff, I wouldn't be able to buy a tenth of it. So it's a lot cheaper this way. And here I am yapping on and stuff and not paying attention. Okay, it's supposed to be 3 grams. So let's remove. Still too much. Really? Only 3 grams? Yeah, only 3 grams. Yeah, just a pinch. Okay, there's my 3 grams of phosphate. Well, when you think about it, how many people are running PhosGuard and all those other things to take phosphates out of their water? So not much in the way of phosphate goes in this thing. 3 grams, which is probably like a 1/16 of a teaspoon. Look how much I got left. It's going to go a long way. Okay, and last but not least is MgSO4, which is magnesium sulfate. And you see, magnesium is one of the more important ones. And we get 20 or 30. 20 grams of magnesium sulfate. Okay. So this one's going to be, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. Yeah, 13. Alright, just about there. There we go. Alright. I know this is just very enjoyable, kind of like watching paint dry. But, you know, hey, what else are you going to do on a Easter Sunday afternoon when you're full of sugar and chocolate and got all kinds of energy. So, a couple of chunks in there, we'll break it up, stir it up a little bit so it doesn't clog the little spout on the funnel. Alright, 20 grams of magnesium sulfate, which is your magnesium. And that's it. Okay, this will complete the macro mixture, and let's see. Okay, so the 500 milliliter line, next step is to add the water. Now they do say sometimes use like distilled or whatever water. The water we have in our area is so soft, it doesn't even register on any of the tests. And I've even had it electronically, professionally tested at a lab, and it is just, it has barely anything in it. So it's about as close to distilled or RO water as you can possibly get without going out and actually buying it. So I think that's close enough to add it here. I don't have to worry about it messing with this chemical mixture too much. At any rate, this line right here where the rim of the bottle is the 500 milliliter line. So all I got to do is fill her up to that mark. And there she is. cap on. Make sure both caps are tight. Now, one other thing you want to do, you want to make sure that when you do your mixtures, to let them set for 24 hours. You want to get all of those chemicals completely dissolved into the water before you start using them. So I've already done my dosing for the day, and I will probably come back in and shake that a couple times during the day again to make sure it's all mixed up. But I'm going to let it set overnight, and it won't actually start being deployed into the tank until tomorrow. So that one is done. Now we have our micros. Now the micros, I got the Plantex. There's a couple of different ones throughout the different websites at Greenleaf. They have, I think, one or two that you can pick from, but basically it is a comprehensive. It's got a couple of different things mixed together. These are such small traces that I don't feel it necessary to have to go through and break them up into their individual components. And you can get them in their individual components, but I feel that the premix is just fine for what we need. So let's go ahead and redo this. Okay, we're zeroed out. Okay, and this is 40 grams of the Plantex, which is the premix. So we're going to spill some of this in here since it's all the way at 40. Get close. Ooh, wow, look at that. 39.5, man. Hey, that's good. A little dab more. Yeah. He's alive. There we go. Mad scientist. Okay. Double check that. 40 grams. Yep. Okie dokie. So here we go. Okay, and once again, cap that off. Fill it with water up to the rim. Okay, get the other cap on there. Make sure they're both tight. And same thing with this. You're going to want to shake it up a couple of times during the day, let it set overnight, make sure that it's completely dissolved before you actually start using it in the tank. Okay, I'm going to shake that a little bit more. This one you need to shake a little bit more than the original one, but just make sure they're both well shaken and that all the chemicals are dissolved in. And one last final note with these two things. This is not necessary, but I find it useful, and if you watch some other videos online, you will hear some other guys talking about it. A good thing to do is to add about 5 milliliters of Excel, Flourish Excel by CSM, to each of these bottles. not for the aspect of it being used, but Flourish Excel also kind of acts as a disinfectant, shall we say. And what it does is during the time period while you're using these and slowly diminishing the levels, it keeps any algae or bacteria or anything else from growing inside of these bottles. And I ran across, it wasn't on YouTube, but it was on the internet. I don't know, some of you might have seen it. I ran across a video where the guy had showed the bottles where they had green algae growing all over the insides of them and everything like that. And he made kind of a, you know, a plea to everybody, you know, use the Excel, it's well worth it. So now I'm sure in his case he probably had the bottles sitting right in the direct sunlight and everything where, you know, it was accessible, probably didn't cap them real well so they had plenty of oxygen, yada yada. I'm sure it gave them the right conditions, but nonetheless, just, you know, hey, what does 10 ounces of Excel cost, you know? It's worth it for not having to deal with the annoyance of. So after 24 hours, when these are fully dissolved, and before I use them, I will add a dash of Flourish Excel, or if you have the homemade version, you know, whichever. But just add it in there a little bit. You don't have to do it, and if you keep them in a cool, dark place most of the time, you probably won't have a problem with it. It's not, you know, a necessity. In none of the directions on any of the websites where you buy these chemicals have I seen in the directions where they recommend that or anything like that. I have seen it in some of the forums though, but I just found that it works for me, and so, you know, that's what I do. But at any rate, I'll finish it up with that. If you want to save some money and be able to make your own mixtures according to your water conditions in your area, I do highly recommend the dry ferts. There is a couple of different sites out there. There's Greenleaf Aquariums, of course, which is in Florida. So if you're on the East Coast and you want quick shipping and all that, that might be the way you want to go on that. And then out in California, I think it's PlantedAquariums.com, or I'm not sure exactly of that address, but if you Google aquarium dry fertilizers or whatever, you're going to come up with a couple of different sites, and those are the two primary ones that I know of. I'm sure there's plenty more beyond that, but the idea being is you do have control over the amounts of chemicals. They give you a basic starting point of what you should add, and then if you're very into the hobby and you're watching and you notice that you're deficient in one particular chemical, you can add a little bit more of that to your recipe should you need it. So to all of you, happy Easter, and don't forget we got a surprise coming up this next week, so be watching for the surprise video. And thanks for watching. Happy Easter.